Welcome back to another edition of the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson. Today, we have a big episode for you. We have a two-parter. We are joined by Sean Martin of the PGA Tour to discuss his role as a producer of a Scottie Scheffler documentary that is coming out on Monday. I figured it was a great time to talk to Sean and talk about Scottie Scheffler after the Hero win. Just kind of put a bow on his outstanding year, historic year, all-time great year, and the documentary that they have put together. I've watched part of it. It was really, really well done. Sean is one of the most golf obsessive people and in the weeds people, a person I know. I think it really shows to see something that was made by someone who's really interested in golf. So I would urge like people that listen to this podcast, you're pretty deep in the weeds on golf, to listen to that or to watch that documentary. It is really well put together. The second part of this podcast, our own Garrett Morrison is in Australia. He's winding down his 2-week trip to the Sandbelt. So we had him come in, check in, talk a little bit about his trip so far to Melbourne. I am very jealous of Garrett. He's going on a trip of a lifetime right now, and it was fun to catch up about his kind of early takeaways, in the moment takeaways from spending a long time in the Melbourne Sandbelt and the golf courses he's seen. So let's get to this podcast, but first let's talk about Club TFE. We're getting down to the nitty gritty, that late minute shopping window. A great gift is to join Club TFE or give the gift of Club TFE to a golf obsessive person that you love. We do a ton of content in there. We write a lot about golf courses, a lot of Garrett's deep thoughts about Australian golf will be in Club TFE. We usually produce 2 to 3 pieces a week in Club TFE. We've got a really highly engaged and really awesome community in there that conversate about golf. We Club TFE members have early access to our events, and overall, it is a great way to support what we're doing here, and you get a lot from it. You get a discount in the pro shop. It's $120 for the year. And if you guys are interested, I mean, we are going to be pouring a lot of investment into the membership, making it a really vibrant community in 2025. If you're interested, go to thefriedegg.com/membership to check it out. That's thefriedegg.com/membership. Thank you, guys. Let's get to Sean Martin on Scottie Scheffler. All right, 2024. I think when we look back at this year, 5 years ago, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, this year is always going to be the year of Scottie Scheffler. Sean, I think you hold this sentiment, and I would say you might be leading the charge around this sentiment. You are the producer of a Scottie Scheffler documentary that was produced by the PGA Tour that will be coming out on Monday, 12/23. That's the 23rd of December on the PGA Tour YouTube page. So I thought it would be great to have you on to talk a little bit about the documentary, but also the year of Scottie Scheffler. From your standpoint, Sean, you cover the PGA Tour week in, week out, day in, day out. You are as well versed in golf history and facts and stats and the ongoings of PGA Tour golf as anybody I know. When was a point in the year where you kind of were like, wow, this is getting pretty ridiculous?
The idea for the documentary, I mean, it got ridiculous early, right? He won 4 out of 5 starts, then he got arrested and had the birth of his first child. I think that was pretty ridiculous. I think the idea for the documentary came about after he won the Olympics, because that's one where you only can win it once every 4 years. And so, Masters and players in the same year, Tiger had done that. But I mean, are you going to see someone win a Masters of Players and a gold medal in the same year? Probably not, because there's so few chances at that. So I think that was when, all right, now we've got 7 worldwide wins. We've got probably the biggest title in the sport. We've got several other huge titles, and then we've got the biggest title in sports, period. And so I think that's when it's like, man, this needs to be memorialized.
What were if you were going to synthesize this down? You've been kind of living and breathing Scottie Scheffler the last few months of your life. If you were going to synthesize this down to 3 big moments across the year, what would you kind of point to as the 3 big moments of Scottie Scheffler this year?
I think Riviera is the first. I think going back through his season as we were putting this together, I forgot how bad the putting was and how it had gotten even worse in 2024. So he had the 36-hole lead in 2 of his first 3 starts. He had the 36-hole lead at the Century, lost strokes on the greens on the final 2 rounds. He had the 36-hole lead at Pebble and lost strokes in the 3rd and final round because it was shortened by rain, and finished, I think, 5th or 6th. And then Phoenix was especially bad. So they had weather delays there. He goes back Sunday morning to finish his 3rd round. He has like a 30-footer from the middle of the green on 18, and he putts it into a bunker. And I totally had forgotten about that shot. But then he's still in contention in the final round, and he misses putts from inside 5 feet on 13 through 15, finishes 3 shots out of the playoff between Nick Taylor and Charlie Hoffman. And then he goes to Riv, and he finishes 2nd in strokes gained tee to green behind my guy Hideki, and dead last in putting. And you see him, like, he chucks his ball into the woods. He's dropping his putter. It's really eating him up. And I think it's one of the cool parts where we were able to get some stuff for this that I hadn't heard before. You get Sam Burns talking about how, like, that their wives would go to bed and they'd pull out the putting mats and they'd start experimenting with putters because they're trying to figure it out for Scotty. You get Scotty's mentor, Brad Payne, talking about how after Genesis, they kind of had to sit down and Scotty's like, I am not doing well. And Brad's like, you know what, being honest about it, like, is the first step to this getting better. And then you have Scotty even talking about kind of how it was wearing on him. And so I thought that was really cool to get some further depth on his frustrations. And then, of course, the next start
I think one of the things, if we zero in on this a little bit more, the putting. I mean, this putting thing was not just this year.
Right.
It went back to last year where he was hitting. I'll never forget in this, like, when you think about this period of time when, like, he was really lost on the greens. Because he never was like the world's greatest putter, but he wasn't this bad.
No.
Like he was a serviceable putter throughout his youth and amateur days and into the early part of his career. And then all of a sudden it was just like kind of gone. But I'll never forget, I went, at LACC, it was really bubbling up last year at the US Open. I mean, this was a big storyline where you just see Scottie Scheffler leading the field strokes gained. Oh, he finished 3rd again. He finished 4th again. And like, that was the thing. It was just like, oh, he's not winning. He's finishing 3rd and 4th over and over and over again. And I remember I went out, it was either Tuesday or Wednesday. I went out, he was on the putting green with Ted Scott when I left the range. And I went out and watched practice round for 2 or 3 hours. And I came back and he was still on the putting green. And I think, like, one of the things with this is, like, he was pouring so much mental energy into it. And I think, like, almost every golfer can relate to a certain extent. Golf's one of those sports where almost when you pour all the resources in, sometimes it has the complete opposite effect of what you want to get out of it. Right? Like, being acutely aware that your putting is costing you winning tournament after tournament has to make putting more and more difficult.
And I think, too, the hard part for 2024 is it looked like it might get better at the end of 2023. He hired Phil Kenyon, and then he wins the Hero World Challenge. It's like, oh, maybe he's figured it out. He's had a few months with Phil, and they got it sorted out. And then he comes out in 2024, and it's just as bad, if not worse, than ever. And I think that was especially jarring.
And that Riviera week, I mean, it had gotten to the point, like, it happened for so long that it was almost like a joke. Mm-hmm. It was like, oh, he can't putt. He had gotten to that point where it's like, well, like, he can't putt. He just can't make anything. He would win all the time if he could putt. And then sure enough, like as you allude to, it kind of like starts, this is the low point and things change. And then guess what happened? He won a lot.
Yeah. I mean, if he had putted the way he did for the rest of 2024 before Bay Hill, he could have won 4 of those events.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that's your moment number 1. What's your next moment? Is it Bay Hill?
It's probably Bay Hill. I think just the turnaround there. I don't want to give away too much, but I think one of the great sound bites we get is Shane Lowry, who played in that final group. He says, I walked off the golf course that day not thinking I could beat him even if I had my best stuff, which is rare for another tour player to say about a fellow tour player. And I think that one, too, it's really cool. We have a great field logistics staff led by Sam Davis and Jeff Garrison, and they're always shooting and making sure people are always shooting. And there's some really cool behind-the-scenes moments there that I think are great. I think overall with this documentary, we did the interview with Scotty the night that he was given Player of the Year last week, or December 10th, I think. And I think you just see, Scotty. Maybe I don't want to say a different side, because I think we see it, but you see the funny, self-deprecating, charismatic Scotty that maybe we didn't see as much in 2023 when the putting was going awry, and maybe you don't see, because I think he does have a slightly guarded image when he's doing press conferences, because it's just such a kind of chaotic environment. And I think that Scotty, when he gets to a tournament, is really focused on competing. He wants to make sure, I think, that he doesn't say anything controversial, because he doesn't want to have to think about it or answer about it again or hear about it again, because he just wants to compete that week. And so I think getting him away from the tournament season, away from the chaos of a tournament, he's not trying to compete. I think you see a little clearer view of kind of the Scotty that we hear about, of being funny and having, I don't know, a good character, I guess.
I think that personality, and I think this is something that doesn't get talked about enough with the way pro golf has gotten really young, is that you have these guys, you think about Scottie Scheffler's career, it's okay, he turns pro and he goes down to the Korn Ferry and he thrives. He wins a bunch. He number 1 player on the money list. He comes up, and then he immediately becomes a very good player on tour. But when Scottie Scheffler's doing press conferences, it's just did he shoot a really good score? And then all of a sudden, it's Scottie Scheffler is going to do a press conference or have people talk to him at this point in his life every single day that he's on site at a tournament. And that is for somebody in their mid-20s is a crazy thing to have. You go from basically talking to no one ever about your golf to having to talk about your golf every day. And I think our natural reaction is okay, these guys don't have, none of these new guys have personality. But I think what we've seen over the last 2 years, and I think the arrest helped a lot with this, is we've seen Scotty's personality and humor and that laid back, self-deprecation has kind of bubbled up as he's gotten more and more comfortable with this life of being in front of the camera all the time. One of the issues is we just don't have many guys that get that treatment for a long period of time, because the sport has gotten to the point where there's an influx of these almost interchangeable young stars. And, very few outside of Rory and Scotty and Rahm and have had this staying power at the top of the game. And
I know you're a paying subscriber to the Normal Sport newsletter. Shane Ryan did a Q&A in there, and he actually advocated for players having less press access, which you would never hear a journalist say. But honestly, with Scotty this year, it was a great point, I think, and you could almost make a case for it, because, I remember by the playoffs, I'm I am out of questions to ask Scottie Scheffler. He has done he does every tournament he shows up, he does a pre-tournament press conference. And pretty much every round, so he does maybe 5 press conferences a week every time he plays. And it gets difficult. You just run out of things to ask about. And I think late 2023 and even early 2024, the putting, I think it helped him. It was the first time he really faced scrutiny as the number 1 player in the world. 2022, he comes on so fast, wins those 4 times in 6 starts. He never was number 2, 3, or 4 in the world. He went straight from number 5 to number 1 in the world when he won match play.
Mm-hmm.
And then he wins the Masters. And, he's just this media darling kind of nice story of this guy that came out of nowhere. You're kind of in your introductory phase with the media. And then 2023 even starts off the year well, wins Phoenix again, wins the Players. And so really when the putting struggles happen, that's the first time he's facing media scrutiny. And I think that getting through the putting struggles helped him better deal with media scrutiny, and just that will come when you're the number one player in the world, no matter what you're doing, because frankly, people have so many questions for you that you're just going to get asked about stuff. And so I think he's gotten better with the media in general, but I think, yeah, like I said, I think he still also wants to leave a press conference not worrying, did I say something that's going to add stress to my week because I'm just here to win this golf tournament.
The ironic thing is, during those struggles, I think there was a point in time where he said the putting was kind of, he did the classic media narrative that it's not that bad.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think the Genesis scene where he talks, his mentor Brad Payne talks about, like, that's where he really just said, like, I am not doing well. Like, this is wearing on me. This is getting to me. And I mean, the next event was Bay Hill, and you can make a very strong case that, like, the spider was the key to turning around the putting. But even Sam Burns, his good friend who played with him at Bay Hill, said the other big thing was that at Bay Hill, because he misses like a 6-footer on the first hole of the tournament, misses like an 8-footer on the third hole, he was less reactive. And he talks in his winner's press conference that week of, like, my big thing this week was that I was not going to react to the misses. Like, I was just going to stay positive and trust the process, which we say a lot. But I think, you know, when you're struggling with your putting and you miss 2 short putts in the first 3 holes, it's easy to not trust the process. And so I think that, yeah, the spider was a huge asset, but I think also that mentality change was a huge asset as well at Bay Hill.
The Rory in the press, you know, this could forever be a moment in the history of golf, is Rory in the booth doing Riviera, you know, Sunday coverage, talking about Scotty's putter and saying he should go to the Mallet. The next event goes to the Mallet, and then sets off effectively a supernova of wins.
Yeah, I do think, unfortunately, he was already testing the spider. It wasn't Rory.
It's just it'll always be linked there. And whether,
sure,
you know, it might have been the final thing that pushed him over the edge. It could.
I mean, look, it's a great narrative. I think it was my best tweet of the year. Was I took the screenshot from the Ryder Cup where Shane Lowry's trying to pull Rory back into the car, and I was like, we got footage of Shane trying to stop Rory from telling Scotty to use a mallet.
Well, then last night at that match, he was telling Scotty about creatine. You know,
I've heard it's good for the brain as well as the muscles.
I mean, what if Scotty picked up 20 more yards because of Rory's creatine comment?
He could. I think he has more in the tank. He just doesn't choose to, you know, air it out very often.
I mean, that's the thing about Scotty's game. That's like, I mean, it's just unbelievable when you watch him over. Like, I think like one of the favorite things about my job and kind of how I like to go about major championships is I just like pick players and I watch their whole round. And you see, and it's just like Scotty's game is just relentless. I mean, the driver is such a weapon. It is so accurate, you know, and like you think about like the biggest weapons in golf, like when you think about drivers, you generally think Rory. And I think if I was going one or the other, I might go Rory. But Scotty's driver is like, sure, he's not the longest guy, but the accuracy of it and what it does to complement the iron play is it does exactly its job. And he's got this sublime ability to hit iron shots. It's just watching him hit iron shots. It's one of the greatest things, you know, if you're into golf, it's one of the greatest things you can do because they just come out of the perfect window and they're just beautiful. But like the driver is such a weapon because it just puts him in position to hit iron shots. Picking up 20 yards, but costing accuracy. It's like you see him sometimes hit the gas and hit it a little bit further. But the biggest weapon is just putting himself in a position to hit approach shots from fairways.
The best example was Travelers, actually. And I found it going back through a season. I had kind of forgotten about it, but he's in the playoff with Tom Kim. And he could obviously blow it past Tom Kim if he chose. But instead in the playoff, he hits 3-wood because he hits 3-wood off that tee every time. And he gives this great explanation in his post-round presser of why he hits 3-wood, that the fairway narrows where he hits driver. The bunker that I think we saw hit the lip that one year comes into play if he hits driver. So going back to your point of giving himself opportunities, he says, why am I going to risk going to this bunker that can be dead? Why not just hit 3-wood and find the fairway? And sure enough, he hits 3-wood. He's 40 yards back of Tom Kim. And he stiffs an iron, and Tom hits in the bunker, and the playoff's over. And Trevor Immelman, who's involved pretty heavily in this and makes a lot of appearances, kind of doing analysis for this documentary. You know, we do a lot of the Tiger comparisons, but he says he's the best player with strategy since Tiger. And it was a very Tiger-esque move of, I'm going to lay back 40 yards, and I'm still going to stiff the iron shot. I have enough confidence in my iron play that I can give up 40 yards to my opponent and still win the playoff.
It's it's funny.
Which is also very antithetical to how the game's played today, right? It's
exactly.
Push it up, push it up, push it up, hit driver, hit driver.
It's, when I think back, the most successful time of my mid-am career is when I reached this point in my life, and I hit it plenty far for a mid-am, but I reached this point where anytime I felt any discomfort on a tee, it could be like a 470 yard par 4. I would just pull out a 3-iron. And it's like, well, I'll hit it into the fairway. And from there, I'm hitting an iron on a fairway. And you think about like Scotty, just like if he can just set himself up where holes are just par 3s, where you're hitting shots from short grass into a green, it makes his life so stress-free because of how prodigious his iron play is. And then also the short game, which always, I think it's at a point where it's like almost his iron play is so good that the short game doesn't get talked about enough, that he might be the best player with a wedge around the green in the world too.
So I saw it at Hero. We did a lot of our interviews with players about Scotty at the Hero World Challenge.
He got to go to the Bahamas.
I'd never been. The resort was great. I got a little tan in December. It was fantastic.
Did you wear all black? Did you go all black? All navy?
No, I did not. But there's 2 chipping greens there, and there's kind of a desert sandy cutout between them, and guys are chipping at both. And the only player that I saw chip from like the sandy waist area was Scottie Scheffler, which is ironic because he's also the player least likely to end up in the sandy waist area. But I think he was having Ted Scott throw balls down, and wherever Ted threw it, he had to chip from. But I just thought that was, we can obviously overread this anecdote. I don't know, maybe Akshay Bhatia came by 15 minutes later and hit one from there.
Yeah.
And I was in the bathroom. But you can definitely overread it. But I just thought it was really telling of because Scotty talks a lot about preparation, how on the first tee, he gives himself a little talk and says, I've done everything I can to prepare this week. Now I just need to go kind of execute. The results aren't up to me. I've done my part. I've done the preparation, and it takes pressure off of him. And that's the epitome of the preparation, is hitting chip shots out of the sandy area when you're the player that's least likely to find it.
All right. We got off subject here. What was your third kind of moment of the year?
The Olympics was big. Not just the 29. We don't get into it as much in the documentary, but on a different podcast, I think it was Colton O's podcast, Ted Scott was on there, and he says that it was the best job he had done, I think, in his 25-year career of turning a player around from where they were on Thursday, Friday to Saturday, Sunday, in terms of attitude, which is saying a lot because his previous boss was Bubba Watson. But the thing with Scotty, you saw it with the putting, and then you're probably going to dog me for this, but then you did start to see it with the FedEx Cup of you just get the same questions over and over again of you're number one, you're leading, you're going to have this 2-stroke lead. And it starts to kind of wear on Scotty. Plus all the stuff, I think, of the year you've dealt with, again, the 5 press conferences a week. You've had your first child. You've been arrested. You've been doing this for 7-8 months now. You're probably a little burned out. And Scotty was missing putts the Olympics, hitting it great. And he's not in a good headspace. And Ted kind of gives him a talk of hey, you're the number 1 player in the world. They're going to go in. You just got to be patient. And but even on Sunday at the halfway point, like Scotty's so fed up with his putting, he threatens to break his putters. They're making the turn on Sunday, which is crazy because he's about to play the best 9 holes of the season, of his career, of golf history. Might be a lot, but man, it was a good 9 holes.
Great back 9. It also makes Cam Young breaking his driver at Rocket Mortgage 1 back with 4 holes to go even more crazy.
But then there's a great anecdote. I've given away too much, but here's a great anecdote about stiffing it on 16. And Brandel really just put it best. We had Brandel talk on the pod as well. And Brandel was like, man, it was the pinnacle of sport. Now, maybe not for golf. Golf has the majors, but the Olympics are the pinnacle of sport. And you had the pinnacle of sport coming down the stretch. The best player in the world is on like full display of all his powers. Like if you remember, he chipped in on the 3rd hole in the final round. And then both of his playing partners unprompted. They were Thomas Dietrich and Tom Kim. When I asked him the best shot he hit on that back 9, it was this chip shot on 14. They both agreed. I didn't tell either one what the other one had said. He's in kind of this thickish rough. He's short-sighted.
Was that the par 5?
Yeah, he's got to run it up a bank.
Yeah.
And he kind of hoods something to get it. You've got to hit it hard enough to not fluff it out of the rough, but you've then got to get it running up the slope, but then not with too much speed because the flag's only 6 paces on. And he hits it close and makes the putt. And you also, you saw Scotty flag iron shots. You saw Scotty hit chips. He also had a great up and down the previous hole. Like, you really did just see, like, if you want to look at, like, okay, what makes Scottie Scheffler great? Like, that back 9 of the Olympics, like, shows all of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's incredible. It was incredible round of golf. And I think it's like fitting. I mean, we look back now, like I think like the Olympics this year really cemented itself in the golf calendar, like in like the place of golf, especially when you start to look back at like who's won it. Justin Rose at the time, world class, top of the bucket player, Xander Schauffele, and now Scottie Scheffler. And I think like you saw like that there is like a weight to that Olympic gold that you see on that back 9 on Sunday, on not Sunday, but in round 4, where you see guys kind of melt away, whether it's even for the bronze. You know, it is a heavy thing. And I think when you boil down great athletes and why we invest so much time and energy of our lives into sport, is to see those moments where the chips are down, the gravity of the moment is very heavy, and then you see the supreme talents in the game rise to a different level. And I think that's what made that Olympics win such in some ways as memorable. And I think some people might disagree with this, as memorable, maybe more memorable than his Masters win this year.
Yeah. And he chased down John Rahm and Xander Schauffele too.
Yeah. Rory was in the mix too.
Yeah.
Incredible win.
The Masters was pretty similar because he got off to kind of a slow start in the final round. Birdies 8, 9, and 10. Homa makes a double on 12. Ludwig hits in the water on 11. Colin makes a couple doubles. And Scotty knocks a long iron onto the 13th green, knocks a stiff on 14. And that pretty much cements it. Then he birdies 16, which is really the last dangerous shot after 13. And, it was a close battle at the turn, and it was an easy walk up 18 by the time he was done. Like, everyone else kind of folded around him, and he just kept going and was, like you said earlier, relentless.
I think it's kind of it's alarming to think about where he goes from here, especially after the Hero.
The Hero was insane. The Hero was like, oh, you should have been off for 2 months, relaxing.
Yes.
And then you beat him by 6. Like, oh, I changed my putting grip a little bit, and I just waxed everyone.
He looked really good with the putter. Like, yeah. I thought he had like a confidence level that I hadn't seen from him in forever. But like the other effect of this is like, I saw this this Ben Coley tweet. List of players who didn't win this year is pretty mad. Funny what happens when Sheffler wins most weeks. All right, this is the list. of players that didn't win in 2024. Ludwig, Sam Burns, Patrick Cantlay, Jason Day, Tony Finau, Matt Fitzpatrick, Ricky Fowler, Brian Harmon, Russell Henley, Nikolai Højgaard, Max Homa, Victor Hovland, Sung J.M., Tom Kim, Colin Morikawa, Justin Rose, Adam Scott, Jordan Spieth, Sepp Straka, Sahith Theegala, Justin Thomas, Cameron Young, and Will Zalatoris. And we're 1 year. This is the first year of the pro of and we'll see how many there are of prolific winning, prolific totals. But I think something that people forget about the Tiger era was what Tiger's accomplishments, when you have a player like this, what it does to the accomplishments of the players around them. And this has the, I don't want to get hyperbolic, and I might have gotten a little hyperbolic in the moment after he won the Hero on the shotgun start, but
you never get hyperbolic on the shotgun start. I'm surprised to hear this. Thought PJ would have reined you in.
Never get out over my skis.
We don't have a soundboard on this podcast, do we?
No, okay. We don't use the soundboard. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for double-digit wins.
I mean, like I said, if he had putted the way he did all of 2024, he could have reached double digits. It just feels, that's still really hard. It's
like I feel caught, but I guess we've seen when the putter doesn't work, and it's every week, it's just it's kind of is he going to lose a step off the tee or approach play? Could he get in a bad swing spot? And I don't know if that's in the cards, really.
The interesting thing is going to be if he doesn't win one of his first 4 starts, because then he's going to face, and it used to bristle Tiger. I love looking at old transcripts. You're going to get asked, hey, why aren't you winning? Why aren't you winning? And it gets really annoying for a professional golfer and Scotty says it a lot. He goes, golf's a really difficult game. And so I think kind of like the putting where the questions wore on him, and I think he'll have learned from it, from the putting, but it still can get annoying, is he's going to have to face in 2025, hey, why didn't you win? Why didn't you win? What's wrong? You haven't won in 3 starts. And which, on the paper really is a ridiculous question if you haven't won in 3 starts, but he's going to get asked those all the time. And he's going to have to learn to deal with it, which I think he has learned, but it's still going to be a hindrance to, it's just going to be noise around him and chatter, which is kind of what we talked about when he won Bay Hill, all the noise and chatter he had to kind of deal with.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the process of putting together this documentary. It's an hour long. Mm-hmm. You're the producer. Is it executive producer? Or are you executive?
No,
just producer.
Michael Reisman and Laura Neal are our executive producers.
Okay, you're the producer.
Yeah.
Is this the biggest documentary video project that you've put together thus far in your career?
Video by far. It's the biggest project of my career. I've been living it. We have we have a ton of amazing people helping. Michael Reisman, if he didn't greenlight this after I kind of texted him with the idea after he won the gold medal, this never would have happened. We have an amazing editor in Mark Lindenberry. We have an amazing director in Skylar Morton, who's been huge. We've been working side by side on this because, I'm not a video guy, right? I think I know how to tell stories. That's what I've done for a living for a long time now. But to actually put it together in a video and piece together sound and make sure it moves, because we don't have a narrator. So there's no voiceover here as far as one single narrator. It's all sound from interviews, and it's all original. It's not all. It's the vast majority of it is original interviews. There's some sound bites from press conferences, but it's a lot of interviews. And so Skylar has been huge in helping organize this thing and making it make sense and piecing it all together. But yeah, it's the biggest project of my career for sure. For
the stuff of it you shared with me, I think I was most impressed with the vast array of interviews that were done. And
there's so much. I feel bad. There's so much on the cutting room floor. There are people who gave us 30 minutes of their time, and they might be in it for 30 seconds. And part of that is because of the way it came together. We interviewed Scotty. Our final Scotty interview was December 10th, and we got a lot of the players at the Hero. So we were kind of interviewing people hey, an announcer, for example, might be a big voice in this. We might need him to kind of piece it together for us and bring the story together. And then we went to the Hero. We got some great stuff there. And then Scotty was so good in our interview with him in Dallas. We're like, man, like now we've got to fill it in with Scotty. So we're kind of in the process of tearing apart a lot of what we did and putting Scotty in there. But that was one of the challenges.
What during the kind of interview process, what was there a do you have one moment, anecdote that really stands out above the rest?
Scotty's horrible memory has always impressed me. So I first saw it, I was at the Houston Open one year and he shot the course record at Memorial Park. And I was like, how many other course records do you have? He's like, I don't know. And he's like, probably that place I shot 59. I'm like, oh, where did you shoot 59? He goes, I don't know, that first playoff event, whatever it's called. And then I'm like, wait, do you mean the 59 you shot last year at TBC Boston, like playing with DJ? He's like, oh yeah, that one. I was like, how do you not remember that? And then, so he did his Player of the Year press conference before our interview, and he gets asked about the Olympics. He goes, yeah, that was a great round. I shot like 63 or 64. It's like, dude, you shot 62 like 4 months ago to win the Olympics, and you don't remember the exact number of it? Like, but that's his gift, right? Of like, he is very present. He talks about compartmentalizing. Like, he's not thinking about the past, he's not thinking about the future. That's his gift that everyone talks about. So that was funny. And honestly, just like the self-deprecating, I think going into it, there was some stress of like, all right, how do we handle the arrest, right? Because for a long time, it was a touchy subject. He didn't want to talk about it. I mean, for a while, he couldn't legally talk about it. And he said in a podcast recently, I think it was also Colton Oates, that during the year, like when people would ask him about it, like he would start shaking because he was still traumatized by it. And so we're like, all right, the arrest might...
Crazy situation when you just think about, like, when you look back now, is like you're driving into a tournament, thing you do every 4 days a week, 20 weeks a year.
Yeah.
And like everybody's been to an entrance of a golf tournament knows it's chaotic, and like you have to kind of like, if you're going somewhere, like I think about this when this happened, I think about like how we get to the Masters, the media, because we have like a media parking that's on site at the Masters, and like there's a middle lane that I usually go into because the traffic backs up, and it's like basically what Scotty did. And the next thing that happens, you're playing a tournament, you're the number one ranked player in the world, you're in contention, you're being pulled out of your car and handcuffed.
Yeah. Honestly, interviewing Tiger was one of the highlights. We also interviewed Tiger as part of another project, and it was literally, so my Michael Reisman, there was like a huge accident in Jacksonville, and he couldn't make his flight. He was going to do the Tiger interview, and so I get the text at like 8:00, like, hey, you're doing the Tiger interview. And I think I've reached the point in my career, and Tiger's less intimidating than I think he was, and I think that's the way he wants it. And so I wasn't nervous about like talking to Tiger. That's fine. But there's just a lot that goes in an interview with Tiger. Like, you can't just rock up and ask whatever you want. There's been preparation. There's been, things discussed of what's going to be asked and how much time you have. And there's just a lot of moving parts with Tiger because he's on a tight schedule. And so I was like nervous about that part. But that's where we got that soundbite of like, about comparing him to Scotty. And doing that interview, he sat for a long time. He had other interviews to do first. He did his press conference, and he's had back surgery like 2 months ago, and he's kind of uncomfortable, and he's kind of moving in the chair. And I'm like, man, he's going to not want to do this interview. And we were also asking about his 2000 season. And so we start asking questions, and like the second you start talking golf with him, like he just gets locked in. Like there's no more squirming. There's no discomfort. Like, and you can see, I think, the enthusiasm in that clip of like, he just loves talking golf, and he gets deep into the Scotty stuff and the comparisons. So there was that. And then honestly, just the couple like little anecdotes I hadn't heard before that Scotty gave about the season. Like there's one about the Masters. Like after the first round, he's like, I am not hitting it good. And kind of get into the little swing change that he and Randy made, and talked about the Olympics. Memorial, kind of Ted goes through the details of that final hole and what went into that. And I think just those little anecdotes, I think, are what makes it like, we didn't want to do something where we're just packaging together the highlights from the year into like a single hour. Like that, like, sure, there's some value into seeing it all in one place, but like, you want to, the thing when you watch a documentary is like, man, I didn't know that. And like, that's a cool story. Like the two things that you're going to tell your friends after of like, that was a cool story. Like people just love little anecdotes and stories. And I think we got enough of those in there to like kind of carry it and keep it going and keep it interesting where you're not like, man, I'm just watching repackaged highlights.
There is something you hit on. There is like a real art to crafting an interview. especially with what you were doing with the Scottie Scheffler thing. Like, I always think it's like good to get somebody talking for a while before you ask the questions you really want to ask, you know, like you want to get somebody talking for 10, 15 minutes, because that's when generally they open up, and getting them going and saving your, you don't want to burn the questions that about Scottie Scheffler that you really want Tiger to answer right out of the gate. Right. It's like you need to warm them up. What was there a person that you didn't expect a ton from that you got a lot out of?
I think JT, we just released the clip on the Players, and JT played with Scotty at the Players. And it's not that I didn't expect a lot from JT. I like talking to JT, but he gave a couple of details that I had no idea. And then he does this great impression that shows up in the clip of an injured Scotty. Like when he asked Scotty a question, like his neck hurts, so he did like this. And like, it's just pretty funny. And then I think Randy Smith, his swing coach, is like, he has this great Texas drawl where like you feel like you're talking to, like, I don't know, Johnny Cash or someone. And so he's like talking golf swing, but like it's like if you're talking golf swing with Johnny Cash, sort of. And so that was sweet. I mean, he carried a lot of it. He was great. I think Ted Scott, Brad Payne, they gave a lot of like inside stuff that adds to it. I think that maybe either they remember more than Scotty, or just, they added depth to it. And it's great too, because when you're close to like the number one player in the world, you can be concerned, like, man, if I say this, like, they might be mad. I might be out of the circle. I might be in trouble. And I think it's a testament to Scotty of like, I know a couple of them went to him like, hey, we're going to do this interview for this documentary. Like, is it okay if I talk about this? Or is there anything you don't want me to talk about? And he goes, I don't care. I trust you. Like, that's pretty open for a number one player in the world who, like, if they say some crazy stuff on here, like, they're going to get asked about it a ton, right? So that's a testament to Scotty, I think, in the way he treats the people around him, and kind of just does put that trust in them, where he's not like, don't say anything that, happened in private, because people did open about that.
Just in general, just seems like a pretty normal person.
He really is. And I think, so the way this happened is the interview itself, like, Scotty came and Meredith came to, it was a PGA Tour Superstores in Plano. And the first thing they did was like this.
That's where you did the interview?
We did, in the back room. It was wild. And
that's unbelievable.
The first thing that happened was Scotty and Meredith did a charity thing with this charity they're very involved with in Dallas called Behind Every Door. And like, especially, like, they both loved it. Like, they're super involved with this charity. I think they knew some of the people. They really loved, like, being involved with the kids. And especially, like, Meredith, you could tell, like, was really into it. And I think, like, because Meredith was really excited and Bennett was in a great mood, like, Scotty was in a great mood. Like, I mean, your wife and kid are in a great mood. Like, you're doing well. So then he got Player of the Year, which, I mean, I'm sure he knew he was going to get. It was no surprise. And then after that, we did a photo shoot with the Player of the Year trophy. And I think some of the videos and photos have come out of, like, Scotty and Meredith and Bennett with the trophy. Bennett's trying to eat Jack Nicklaus's head. Scotty puts down the trophy. Bennett's crawling to it. And so I think, like, all of that happening, like, it just put, I think, Scotty at ease. Like, because it was not like, it's not like we were at his house where he can control the entire environment, or we were at Royal Oaks Country Club. Like, we were at a PGA Tour Superstores, like, people, like, just the general public were in there. And we were in the back, and we had the door closed, but, like, some guys would probably be a little closed off, a little defensive, like, who's around, is someone going to come in this door? But, like, he was super at ease. And so I think that kind of talks to, like, the normalness there, where, like, he knew Meredith loved just being out in the store with the kids, like, helping them shop for Christmas presents. And so it went great. Whereas some guys would be like, I do not want to be around, like, the public right now. What's going on? He handled it really well.
I love the visual of Scottie Scheffler and family milling about a PGA Tour superstar looking for Christmas presents.
Well, because the reason was, like, FedEx had given these kids
like
gift cards.
They're helping brush.
They're helping the kids shop for Christmas presents for family and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I'd love to see him in, like, the head cover section, picking out a new head cover. That might be the best. What portion of the PGA Tour superstar would you most like to see a one of the top 10 players in the world perusing about?
So, I mean, I could see, and I think there's been stories about it, like the stories when a guy's at a tournament, he's putting horrible.
Yeah.
And so he goes
Patrick
like a
Reed, right? Didn't Reed do it?
I think Furyk did it. Furyk got out of like a bargain bin, like the trash can with like the $10 putters. Like I think it was actually a yes with the C grooves. That's a throwback.
Go to second swing.
Yeah. But so I think the putting, you'd be most likely to find them on a putting green. Like,
I think it would be the most humorous if they were in like the knick-knack section, like
totally.
looking at like a new practice ball tube or something.
The stroke counter with the beads.
All right. So people can watch this on YouTube. What time?
December 23rd, which is Monday at 9 a.m. on the PGA Tour's YouTube channel. It'll also be on Golf Channel on January 1st and 2nd, but that will be cut down a little bit. So the full, if you got one of them streaming televisions, you want to watch on YouTube because that's the full cut.
I love this. I've watched a good chunk of it. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to watching the full thing, and I have to say, I would genuinely love more of this from the PGA Tour content team. So I'm really excited that they dove in with this, and super excited for you to get to produce this as a really cool project.
It was awesome. I think the thing I love about it too is like we're just telling the story of his year, so we're not like trying to go to his house and stage scenes and try to show like, you know, what day-to-day life looks like. It's really just tell us all the inside stuff about your season that doesn't come up, you know, when you're in the heat of battle and you're doing post-round press conferences. And I think we got some of those really good anecdotes. And I mean, I've been living Scottie Scheffler. We've been in this since like we did our first interviews at Memphis at the FedEx St. Jude. And so I'm excited for it to come out. It's been an awesome team. I mentioned all those people before, you know, Laura Neal, Michael Reisman, Skylar Morton, Mark Lindenberry, all of our, like the thing too, like honestly, there are enough behind the scenes shots that like the interviews are great. I love doing the interviews. I love hearing guys talk about their season, but there are cool behind the scenes shots, which are credit to like our camera people and our producers who are like just always be rolling. So like we got good stuff in the locker room after Scotty won. We got actually the scene on the first tee before the final round with Shane Lowry is just kind of a funny little moment that we got. And so that's credit to those people. Like the interviews are cool, but some of that behind the scenes stuff is just a credit to people like making sure they always have the camera on and are shooting.
All right, Sean, have a great holidays, and thanks for coming on. And what a nice little gift for golf nuts to watch over the break.
Cool. No, I appreciate you having me. It means a lot. The support means a lot just because it's been a labor of love, and it's been a little stressful here the last couple of weeks. So definitely appreciate the support from everyone and trying to get this out.
It's all over on Monday. Then you got to just kick back and enjoy.
Yep.
All right, let's kick it over to Garrett for the discussion about the Australian Sandbelt. But first, let's talk about our partner, Stripe. This is one of our longest time partners. Forever, we've used Stripe, really since we started trying to generate revenue as a business. We turned to Stripe, and they've been one of the best partners you can ask for. When it comes down to money, you want a partner that gives you very few headaches. I can attest in the 7 years I think that I've been using Stripe, I've not had one headache. They are the global payments leader. Stripe serves more than 2 million businesses of all sizes, including global giants like Alaska Airlines, Hertz, and the PGA, and it powers 1% of the total global GDP. That's a big, staggering number. They have your standard checkout options, like where you want to buy something online, you go and you check out. One of the things that they do is they learn from trillions of transactions and put those revenue growing insights to work for businesses. Companies that use Stripe's optimized checkout suite saw a revenue uplift of 11.9% on average by intelligently serving up the right payment method to the right customer, converting to their local currency and adapting the perfect experience to any device they want to shop on. They also have Stripe billing, which allows you to do subscriptions, a monthly subscription, usage-based billing, a lot of complex billing systems. They can accommodate that. More than 300,000 businesses use Stripe billing. We are one of those 300,000 plus businesses, and that's more than any other provider. So if you want to learn what Stripe can do for your business, go to stripe.com. Thanks to Stripe. Let's get to Garrett Morrison about his Australian trip here. Garrett, greetings from down under.
Yeah, I'm coming to you from Australia.
What's the band, the Down Under song, Men at Work?
Men at Work.
Men at Work. You are a man at work down there.
It's an appropriate band name for what I've been doing. Yeah, that's kind of the most cliched song to go with, but it is the one that's been playing in my head, admittedly.
So you are on a 2-week excursion to Melbourne. You have played almost all the great golf courses in the Melbourne area. You are also covering the Sandbelt Invitational, which is a really cool golf tournament hosted by Jeff Ogilvy that is across 4 unique golf courses. We'll talk a little bit about that. How's Melbourne been just in general, golf plus life in the trip to that city?
Well, it's been incredible. I sort of expected that, but it's met and exceeded expectations. I've mainly seen the golf. To be clear, I haven't had a lot of time to explore the city, at least in a way that this city would deserve. But it is a big, bustling, very interesting city. And, you could just come here and take a trip here and not play golf and have obviously a lot to do. But the reason a golfer would come here would be to play the Sandbelt golf courses, which are totally unique. Each one is a one-of-one golf course. And I don't think there's golf anywhere in the world that comes close to resembling what they have here. So if you want to seek out an experience that you can't have elsewhere in terms of golf, Melbourne is one of the best places to come. But yeah, the city's been great. I mean, from what I've seen, basically finding coffee shops, that's a lot of what I've done. A couple of takeout restaurants I've gone on little adventures for. Those have been great. I mean, the coffee is so good here. It's the basic, standard of coffee is so much higher in Melbourne than it is anywhere in the US. I've been pretty impressed by that.
What drink have you been drinking? It's a big flat white culture, right?
Yeah, this is a flat white right here that I have from Two Bob Snob. Shout out Two Bob Snob. They give you like a little cookie with it too that they place on top of the cup when they give you the coffee, which is, a generosity that I haven't experienced elsewhere. But yeah, I've been doing flat whites, and they also call what we call an Americano, they call a long black. So I've occasionally been doing that, but it's really like a milk in coffee, a milk and espresso kind of coffee culture, I think.
Yeah, they don't do like the coffee, like yeah. It doesn't seem like anywhere does drip coffee really, except for us, I feel like.
I was a little embarrassed because I didn't do any research on Melbourne coffee before I came here. And the first time I walked into a coffee shop, I was kind of disoriented and I was looking around. I was a dumb American. And I was like, do you guys have any drip coffee? And they kind of looked at me like, no, we don't have drip coffee. But yeah, it's pretty much all espresso drinks.
That's great. That's so the coffee scene's been good. Have you had any Vegemite?
I haven't had any Vegemite. I've been told that I need to do this, even by Australians. I came in here thinking, I'm not going to do this. It's like the most cliched thing to do. I'd be embarrassed like buying it at a grocery store, because I know the checkout person would look at me and be like, oh, you're doing the thing, aren't you? But I guess I got to do it, right? I've got a couple more days here. Oh, fine. I'll go to a market and I'll get some Vegemite. Apparently, What I've heard is that people put way too much of it on whatever carrier they're using for the Vegemite. And that's why people think it's disgusting. It's really one of those things that if you do a light coating, then that's what the intended delivery is.
Let's get into the golf. This is probably what people are most interested in. I do want to hear a little bit about jet lag and how that was. But let's talk about golf. I'd love to hear kind of like some of your first. What courses have you played so far, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so longish list here, but bear with me. Tuesday afternoon, the day I arrived, I played Royal Melbourne East Course. That is basically the other course, right? The West Course is the more famous one, but the East Course also very highly rated. Tuesday afternoon. Wednesday, I played Victoria Golf Club in the morning, and then I drove around the courses at the National. The National is on the Mornington Peninsula, a little ways outside Melbourne and the Sandbelt. I drove around the 3 courses at the National. Those are the Old Course, the Gunnamatta Course, or Gunnamatta, I'm still not sure how to pronounce that, and the Moona Course. That was Wednesday. Thursday, I walked Portsea Golf Club, way out on the tip of the Mornington Peninsula, and I played St. Andrews Beach, another course on the Mornington Peninsula, Tom Doak course. That was Thursday. Friday was my Peninsula Kingswood day. This is a Sandbelt club, but about 30 minutes outside of the city of Melbourne. So kind of like on the edge of what you would consider the Sandbelt. There are 2 courses at Peninsula Kingswood. 36. Well, it wasn't, I didn't play all 36 holes. I played the North Course in the morning and walked the South Course in the afternoon. Spent the whole day with Mike Cocking, who is one of the architects with OCM, Ogilvy, Cocking and Mead, and they designed those courses there. So that was a great opportunity to see those courses with one of the architects. Saturday, I played the West Course at Royal Melbourne. Sunday, I played Kingston Heath, the short course, Furrows, in the morning, newish short course, and played the championship course at Kingston Heath in the afternoon. That was Sunday. Now we're into the Sandbelt Invitational. And yesterday, which was Monday, you guys are still experiencing Monday over in the US, but for me, it's Tuesday right now.
It's a good shotgun start topic.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
the shotgun start. We would have spent 10 minutes on that.
Trying to figure it out. Yeah, it's a little hard. Well, when I fly back, I'm going to arrive before I left. That just kind of makes your head spin, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In any case, the venues for the Sandbelt Invitational, which is a Monday through Thursday event here, are going to be Commonwealth Golf Club, Yarra Yarra Golf Club, Woodlands Golf Club, and then finally Royal Melbourne West. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And on each of those days, I'm going to go to the tournament and walk the course. Yesterday, I got to walk Commonwealth. These are all Sandbelt clubs that people maybe don't know as much about, but they're really, really solid. Commonwealth was recently restored/renovated by Brian Slonick, who's a longtime associate of Tom Doak. And that course looks really good right now. You know, it's an excellent, excellent golf course that maybe people in the States don't know that much about. So it's going to be really cool to see some of these places that are perhaps a little bit underrated.
Well, I feel this way with like Scotland is like people are like, oh, you have to go play North Berwick and Muirfield when you're in, but then it's like, well, Dunbar's really good. Nobody talks about Dunbar, and the Cullen courses 1, 2, and 3 are all wonderful golf courses. Kilspindy's amazing. It's like, and it's like if you put
got London Links and
exactly,
and I mean, like it's such these places that have such deep rosters of golf courses. You've just got to see as many as possible. But anyway,
I mean, so much of it in these areas go to the golf culture that's ingrained in the general area, but B, the conditioning that they can provide because of their natural advantages of sand.
Yes. It's land plus culture. That's what produces these great golf areas. There are also a couple of other factors because a lot of other places have land plus a great golf culture, but haven't necessarily produced this depth of great classic courses like Melbourne has. I mean, it is really stunning how much good golf is just in this area. And then also outside of Melbourne, you got the Mornington Peninsula, and then you've got the peninsula on the other side, which I didn't even go to, that has some good courses. that, Lonsdale Links and Barwon Heads, very well regarded. I didn't get to see those. And so it's really hard to hit everything that you want to hit in one trip. I should mention that before I leave, I'm also going to walk Metropolitan Golf Club. It's probably the most famous course that I haven't mentioned so far, or that I haven't seen so far. Metropolitan, going to walk that course. And I will also make a point to get out to Sandy Golf Links, which is kind of the local public course, so the Muni of the area, which happens to be on kind of elite land and has really good design, literally directly adjacent to Royal Melbourne, and is maintained by Royal Melbourne's ground staff. So imagine living in a city where that's your municipal course. Pretty awesome.
It's a great deal where you get the Royal Melbourne maintenance program at the local municipal golf course, and it's effectively connected to it.
Might be the greatest golf club in the world, and this is where you're where the course, that's the starter course for kids in the area, basically.
All right, let's get to some big takeaways. What are a couple of your big takeaways, and we'll kind of jump from there. So far in the middle of the trip, there's going to be a lot more time to unpack this trip, talk about some minute things. But what have been, while you're there, sitting there mid-trip, what have been a couple of things that have really occupied your brain?
The first takeaway might be a little bit obvious, but it would have to be the firmness of the turf here. That is the thing that provides the basis for the greatness of all of these golf courses. How wonderfully bouncy this turf is. Now, I'm here in the summer. I'm sure that it's not exactly like this all year round, but consistently, every golf course I've played, there has been that big first bounce where a shot lands and it takes a leap forward. And that just changes everything about how you play a golf course. Even if you have a really good player, like I've played with Lucas Michel. I played with Lucas Michel at Royal Melbourne East. Lucas Michel is a US Mid-Am winner. This guy is a very, very good golfer. Hits the ball high, spins a lot. He's somebody who can stop a ball on a green where he wants to typically. I played Royal Melbourne East with him. Even his ball was taking a big bounce forward after it landed, even after he hit well-struck shots. And so that sort of shifts your perspective back to the tee, because you want to be in places where you have a little bit of runway going into the pin. And angles come into play quite a bit more, so that you have this architecture, this great strategic architecture, and you're not just looking at it. You're not just thinking of it theoretically. You're thinking of it practically. This stuff actually functions because of how firm the turf is here. Now, it's mostly Bermuda grass in the fairways, but the clubs that have chosen to go with fescue surrounds on the greens, and typically they're bent grass greens, Royal Melbourne, for instance, has fescue surrounds. That puts kind of gunpowder into that first bounce. It's unbelievable how fiery the run out is when you have those fescue surrounds to the greens. Even the Bermuda is pretty firm, but when they experiment with different types of grasses going into the greens, it makes it all the more fun, I think, and all the more it's kind of intimidating going into these greens, because you need to position your shot correctly.
I think like one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough, I think it's starting to bubble up, but like the maintenance, especially in America, if you want to tie this back to America, the maintenance discussion with golf architecture, like they're codependent on each other. And this is why a lot of the golf that you hear people talk about, when they romanticize, and for the topic of this, like they romanticize the golf they play in Scotland or Bandon Dunes, for example, in the summer, or they romanticize about Australia. In America, you get to like the Hoopies, the Long Island courses, and what these golf courses do. And if you wanted to go non-sand based, people talk about Chicago golf and Shore Acres and places like this. And Sand Valley is a great example of this, where people often romanticize these places, and what they have emphatically across the board firmness, because that amplifies what the designs are. And they talk about the golf courses and the situations that they put you in, but they oftentimes don't talk about the conditions that allow that to happen. And I think and what it does from a design standpoint, in my mind, is it makes designing golf a lot more simple.
Yes, absolutely. You can have sort of a run-of-the-mill strategic design, not anything particularly inventive. But if you have firm turf, then all of a sudden it becomes fascinating, right?
Yes.
You can just have sort of a basic dogleg hole with a bunker on the inside of the dogleg and then the green guarded on the other side. That is a basic strategic hole. Strategy 101, strategic design 101. But if you make the turf firm, then all of a sudden that hole becomes fascinating, even if the architecture is kind of like just right out of the textbook. And that's what's so great about the Sandbelt, is that just you don't have to have an absolutely brilliant, mind-blowing hole in order for it to present a wonderful strategic dilemma.
You were talking about this on your Instagram story, and I thought it was interesting, and it made me think about, you highlighted a hole at Commonwealth, but you highlighted the tilt of the green.
Yes.
And that's like the amazing thing. When you have firmness, just simply a green that tilts fairly severely one direction promotes really interesting strategy. You could have no bunkers and just a tilted green, and it works when you have firmness, and it's a compelling hole.
Yeah. That hole that I highlighted too was playing downwind on that day. And so, you might hear from the strategy gurus out there, the course management analytics gurus, that you can just avoid the hazards, be anywhere on the fairway, approach the green from anywhere. And I'm sure that works for a lot of players, but just come here and play one of those holes, be on the disadvantageous side of the fairway, have one of those little shots into a green that's running away from you, guarded by a bunker that's in front of you from that angle, downwind, and try to tell me that you're not going to try to play that hole differently next time. It just gets in your head when it's so firm, and when the tilts of the land and the strategic design are all working together to affect your decision making. It just makes golf more interesting and puts an emphasis on really great ball striking and having a good plan for approaching a course. And by the way, second takeaway. So first takeaway would be the firmness of the turf, but the second takeaway would be just how rock solid the strategic designs of these courses are. They all make sense. I think that they're, obviously Alister MacKenzie had a big influence on this area. It's a unique situation where a lot of these golf courses were laid out by members and greenkeepers, not necessarily professional designers. But then Alister MacKenzie blew through town in 1926, was here for a little while, not very long, but just had a bunch of dinners, a bunch of drinks with the local golf people, passed around copies of his book, Golf Architecture, and you can see his fingerprints all over these golf courses, even if he didn't necessarily visit them or design a bunkering pattern or have any direct influence on them whatsoever. You can see what MacKenzie talks about when it comes to strategy at all of the good courses in this area. The strategic holes really work. The hazards are really guarding those parts of the hole that provide the best approaches into the green. And often strategy is influenced by tilts, right? It's yes, the hazards are in the right places. You can kind of see the sense of the strategic design from the aerial photos and see the geometry of the hole and how it all works. But when you get on the ground, the big thing is how these greens tilt in certain directions. And again, given the conditions, you really do want to be approaching these greens into the slope, as opposed to hitting shots that land and then run out with the slope going away from you.
Because that firmness and pace of the turf really amplifies that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's an interesting. I think about this with Royal Portrush, for example. they had Harry Colt, I think it was 1926. And you just think about like how much more refined golf architecture was at that point.
Yeah.
And it created this like revolution, but it was so much later than all these other golf, like for Australia, this moment in time with Mackenzie was so late. Golf architecture was so refined. I mean, you're talking about the 1920s, CB Macdonald really changed American golf architecture in 1909 or 1910, and it led to this progressive moment. And it was, really this most advanced period of golf architecture comes to Australia and just completely changes the golf culture, really.
Yeah.
It was a huge transformational moment.
Absolutely. And Australia was in a great position to sort of receive this knowledge and implement it in their golf courses. Because what happened, I say Australia, I really mean Melbourne. Mike Clayton keeps reminding me whenever I see him on this trip, the great Mike Clayton, right? The guru of Australian golf. He keeps reminding me. Frequent podcast. He's the best. And he's been, he kind of arranged the field for the Sandbelt Invitational. And I've played a couple of rounds with him while here. And that's just been a life experience that I'll remember forever. I'm really privileged to get to talk to him. But he keeps reminding me, Melbourne Sandbelt golf is not Australian golf. Australian golf in general has a lot of the issues that American golf has. And so it's not all like it is here. But Melbourne was in a great position to receive Mackenzie's knowledge and implement it because all these clubs kind of started closer to the city. But as Melbourne developed and expanded in the 20s, these clubs moved outside of the city, or what at the time was outside of the city is now kind of in a suburban urban mixture, moved south of the city to the sandy area. And they were all kind of reestablishing their golf courses in the mid-20s, approximately, in this area. And that's when Alister Mackenzie happened to show up. He was hired by Royal Melbourne to come and design that West course, but Royal Melbourne couldn't afford to pay his full freight. And so they kind of rented him out to all these other clubs in the area. And he ended up kind of Johnny Appleseeding around this area. But they were all in a great position to take in what Mackenzie was saying because they were all newly establishing golf courses in this setting. So it was just this great kind of confluence of historical factors, great terrain, and one of history's greatest golf architects and golf architecture theorists showing up and delivering this insight to people who were ready to take it in and do something with it. So yeah, a kind of a magical place. And the way these courses have been maintained and preserved is pretty exceptional as well. They do have some work to do with vegetation management. That's, I think, the big next step for Sandbelt golf, taking out some of these non-indigenous trees and plants that have taken over certain areas of courses. But a lot of the courses are starting to work that direction. And in the places where you see the natural heath of the Melbourne Sandbelt starting to take back over. So the natural heath would be kind of like low-lying, scrubby vegetation with a sand base. Wedding bush. I can't name all the plants that people have introduced me to. What's it look like
for people? This is a non-visual platform.
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with the right words. It's not a million miles away from like the English heathland, but maybe people don't know what the English heathland looks like.
And it's kind of like playable stuff. It's easy to find your ball relatively.
Yeah, it's a little more sparse than, certainly that a tea tree is a kind of an invasive tree that has taken over a lot of courses. That is really thick, and you can't find your ball if you hit it into there. But with this kind of more ground level scrubby vegetation that really should be on this terrain, it is a bit more playable. Though you certainly can get in positions where you would have an unplayable ball. But yeah, just imagine, it's not that dissimilar from the Nebraska Sandhills. So think of, Sandhills Golf Club, the vegetation that's around the fairways there. It's different stuff that's here, but it's kind of in that same general area. And so some clubs are working toward reintroducing that. because, a while back, decades back, when they planted trees, a lot of these clubs did plant, bring in trees to plant. That drove out what the natural heath should have been. But the great thing about it is that if you just clear out those trees, often the seed bed of the natural plants is still there. And so once you clear out the trees, sometimes the good stuff just revegetates, just kind of volunteers because the underlying stuff is still there. So that's kind of the next step for Sandbelt golf, I think. There are some clubs that have some work to do, including Royal Melbourne. The East Course has a good deal of has some tree problems, and they're working to rectify those. But it's a long process because people in this area love their trees, and it's a little hard to take some out. And there are people within the clubs who are devoted to the trees as well. So that's something that's being worked on.
I see. It seems like to be the culture of the area is very, very deep with competition. I think this is like one of the things that probably sets like Ireland's this way too. Is like, is it more stroke play or match play?
Stableford is a lot of what I've heard. They play Stableford quite a bit. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that's been mentioned to me, sometimes as a negative, sometimes as a positive, that Melbourne golfers, especially club golfers, like competition. They like something to be at stake when they're playing. And so there are relatively few just kind of casual hit rounds. I've been playing casual rounds with pretty much everybody I've been playing with. And at the beginning of the round, there's always a funny moment where they sort of ask me, because everybody's been so hospitable, they want to find out what I want to do. And I usually just suggest, why don't we just have a casual hit? And you can see the wheels turning in their head. Oh, okay. Well, we'll kind of do it that way. It's almost a little bit unfamiliar for them to do things that way. But often they will be playing Stableford. There's a lot of different kinds of club competitions. And one thing that Mike Clayton has suggested, and that I've heard from others that I've played with, is that they wish there would be a bit more of a culture of the casual match. So still competitive, but you just put $5 on the line and have a little match with your playing partner. And that's something that has always been done quite a bit, I guess, in Scotland, right? Where a casual round is just like, hey, let's have a match. Let's whoever loses buys the drinks after the round. We don't really do that in America either. Match play is not part of the golf culture there. I hear some desire among the knowledgeable golfers that I've talked with here to reintroduce that a bit to Australian golf culture and to get away from the kind of constant Stableford or various other kinds of stroke play competitions that they often find themselves doing.
I think just in general, my experience, my thoughts as I've thought about it, is that to me, golf cultures that center around stroke play, there is a deep-rooted fascination with penal golf, which is where that love of trees generally fills in. The love of trees, or in the case of Ireland, thick rough. Yeah,
really like pursuing the difficulty. The argument needs to be made in Melbourne and in many other places.
And in America. In America.
Yeah. Like, harder is not necessarily better, right? A lot of people still associate difficulty with quality, and that's just not necessarily the case. I also think that there might be some environmental misinformation out there that people just think trees good. Sometimes that's the case. Other times it's not. In Melbourne, specifically, preserving the natural heath that should be here would be a great priority environmentally, because these are, around these courses, it's pretty stunning. It's really dense development around these courses, very busy streets, dense urban/suburban development. And so these golf courses are functioning partly as nature preserves. And one way they could do that really effectively is by being these little biomes that preserve the native heath.
It's I was recently at Sand Valley, and I drove around the backside of the property, and I saw their, one of the things probably a lot of people don't know is they have like a giant conservation piece of the resort where they have like preserved and basically restored this habitat there. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, like I just see golf everywhere, and it was like the most stunning natural looking landscape. I was like, that looks like where the next, but it's all conservation land. And I think like that's like the misconception is like when you talk about cutting down trees, there are different degrees of it, but I think a lot of the conversation should center around restoring the original landscape, restoring. And I think that's something that actually OCM, the architects at the Australian architects at Medina, one of the things that's unique about that project was the idea of restoring that aesthetic of the area, which is like these oak meadows, you know, where you have these tall oaks and then longer native grasses under them. But it's like that. If you go to a forest preserve in the area, that's what it looks like. And now Medina looks a lot more like that. Mm-hmm. You know, it still has its grand, beautiful oak trees. You're not saying cut down the oak trees. It's more about the entire picture of the landscape. Yeah. And I think like a lot of the most beautiful, best golf courses really fit the landscape. There's the ability to capture a sense of place with that.
At some point, we've got to shift from praising courses that just have trees to praising courses that take seriously what the indigenous landscape is and work to preserve that. And I think that shift would be really meaningful for Melbourne. And, you know, speaking of OCM, their work at Peninsula Kingswood, the club just outside of town, considered a Sandbelt club, they redesigned those courses, that 36-hole club. And one of the things they did really, really well was to bring back some of the native vegetation, remove a lot of the non-indigenous trees. And now Peninsula Kingswood is sort of an example of what other clubs in the area can strive for. They probably do it the best overall right now. So the PK is really advanced in that regard.
That's great. Do you have a third takeaway?
Oh geez, we've run through. Why don't we get into the golf course? One quick thing before we move on to specific golf courses. I will say a lot of the land here in the classic Sandbelt clubs is not what you would normally consider great or perfect land, because quite a bit of it is pretty flat. You know,
at
subtle. Victoria Golf Club, the front nine, there's not that much topographical movement. The back nine gets more dramatic. At Kingston Heath, a lot of that course is fairly flat. Again, the back nine starts to get some more movement, but not what you'd normally consider world-class golfing land. And I think that what this proves is that great design and great turf can make up for a deficit in absolutely elite land. Because I'd consider Kingston Heath still probably a top 20 course in the world. But if you look at the land there, you're like, I kind of can't believe that a course of this quality is on this land. Yeah, it's sandy, it's beautiful, it's great, but it doesn't have that rumple or that dramatic movement that you'd normally associate with one of the world's very greatest golf courses. And so I think that golf here really shows that a lot of the best golf courses show how much can be done with fairly subtle land. Now, with Royal Melbourne West, the extra element that course does have is the more dramatic land, and that's why it kind of stands out.
I think that in general, when I think about golf courses I most want to play regularly, they generally, on the scale of land, are very subtle.
It's the easy walk, you know. I mean, if of all the golf courses I played, the one that I would want to play every day would be Kingston Heath, and that partly because, you know, it's it's a manageable walk.
All right, let's get to the individual golf courses. What has so far been the course that maybe blew away your expectations the most?
I would say Victoria Golf Club. I didn't know as much about Victoria as I knew about Kingston Heath and Royal Melbourne before I came. And it's a really exceptional golf course. I would say world class. I love how this course kind of starts on the more subtle land, as I mentioned before. And it gets your attention with great strategic holes and architecture. And you're playing the front nine and you're thinking, yeah, this is fairly flat land, but I really like this course. This is cool. I could roll with this for 18 holes. This is great. And then you get to the back 9, and that starts to get into more of the rolling land. You're like, oh yeah, this is better, And so the course kind of builds to a crescendo. It really gets to its peak at the 15th hole. I played with Jeff Ogilvy. No big deal. It was a big deal for we filmed a little bit of the round, and he and I kind of talked through the 15th hole in detail. So that will be coming up maybe in a future video or something. But short par 4 that kind of sits on top of a ridge, and it's really pretty stunning.
I remember watching this in the Australian Open a couple of weeks ago. It was really
super interesting
to watch.
Yeah, short par 4, and it just kind of tightens its grip the closer you get to the green. So if you get aggressive with it, you can get into a lot of trouble. Big drop off behind the green. There's some scary stuff at that hole. So it builds to that, right? It doesn't start there and ebb and flow. It kind of has this really coherent narrative arc throughout the round where you start kind of subtle, but you're happy with it because the holes are so interesting and you think, okay, this is what the course is about. But then it adds another ingredient into the mixture with great terrain on the back 9. There's just so many good golf holes out here. I wouldn't say that it's on the same level as Royal Melbourne West, but for sure it's up toward the top of the heap in the Sandbelt for me. And I think that when you talk about Royal Melbourne, Kingston Heath, Peninsula Kingswood, the Victoria Golf Club should be very much in that mix of top tier Sandbelt golf courses that you really need to play if you come here. If you come here, you have 5 days, say, to play golf courses. Victoria Golf Club really needs to be part of it. And I may be a bit biased because I've actually been staying in the clubhouse during my stay here, and that's been really
Look at
fun.
that.
Yeah, I'm looking out on the 18th hole basically at Victoria Golf Club right now. And so it's been really fun.
What's been your favorite course?
I would probably Kingston Heath. It
You
blew me
you'd
away.
want to play.
Yeah, I mean that's the course I want to play. I guess every day.
What's one broad aspect of what makes it such a phenomenal place?
Incredibly inventive strategic architecture. Before, I sort of talked about the standard strategy 101 hole. Say you have a dogleg hole, bunker on the inside of the dogleg, bunker on the other side of the green. Kingston Heath has a couple of those holes, but it finds so many different variations of strategic golf holes through the round that you never get bored of how Kingston Heath is approaching its land. There are some holes there on relatively flat land that I've just never seen before, like hole concepts, architectural concepts that I was not previously familiar with, ways in which risk-reward architecture can be made to feel fresh. I think that's what Kingston Heath does really, really well. And like Victoria Golf Club, it does sort of build to this crescendo where the land gets more interesting as you go along. But I would say the thing that makes Kingston Heath even better than Victoria is this sheer inventiveness of the whole concepts. So loved that golf course. Now, okay, favorite golf course, favorite and best are a little hard to differentiate. Played Royal Melbourne West. I think that's probably the greatest golf course in the world. I don't know. I haven't seen every candidate for greatest golf course in the world that I should see in order to make that statement. But it's hard to imagine that any place does it better than Royal Melbourne West. It's unbelievable. I just didn't have quite as much affection for it as I did Kingston Heath, because Kingston Heath just sort of, that's my type of golf course, right? I have a type of golf course that I really love, and Kingston Heath fits that super well. But Royal Melbourne West is unbelievable. Just like a master stroke of architecture that uses the land to its full potential, and the land is great. So yeah, those would be the two candidates. It will surprise nobody that I come to the Melbourne Sandbelt and say that Kingston Heath and Royal Melbourne West are really good.
It's breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news. There's a reason those courses are so highly rated. They're really exceptional.
All right, let's chat a little bit about the Sandbelt Invitational, the event you're covering. What were your early takeaways from the event? I think just in general, it's a neat event because one of the ideas was give Australians an event to play in at some of the best golf courses in the world. I think there's a issue in the country with just tournament reps for particularly young amateurs. The Wagger, which has come under fire on this podcast before, is really, I think, come under fire. They're like, the Wagger disincentivizes top Australians from playing in a lot of tournaments because they could go out and win the event and see their ranking go down, which is an insane situation. This is happening to a smaller level at the state level in America, where like you might not want to play in something because your ranking could go down. It happens all over the world. But for Australians and young players in Australia in particular, this is a crisis because like to play events, for the most part, they have to leave the country, which is very far away from all these other places. So I believe my memory could serve me, but I remember this being part of the founding of the event. This is the 4th edition of the event, but is to give young Australians a great event to play against. They're playing against some of the best pros in the country.
Playing with them, because they play in these different divisions, men and women, amateurs and pros. So there's a women's amateur division, there's a men's pro division, et cetera, right? So there's basically 4 different competitions happening simultaneously. And yes, absolutely part of the purpose is to give young Australians a reason to play a homegrown event. Another reason is that you can pair these up-and-coming amateurs, these kids, like teenagers in many cases, or a preteen is actually participating in the event, really talented kid. You pair these young players with experienced pros, with golfers who have played for money and made money on golf. And so yesterday, I followed around Commonwealth Golf Club, Richard Green, a shotgun start favorite. Guy is a unit, by the way. He's in really good shape. There's a reason why he's showed up on the Champions Tour and dominated, because he's like kept it together.
I don't know how much of the audience is going to be excited about this, but producer PJ, his interest level in this conversation just peaked.
Exactly. PJ's locked back in. We were talking about golf architecture. PJ was like doing some other stuff, but now we're bringing up Dick Green. Yeah, sorry for those who listen to Fried Egg Pod and don't listen as much to Shotgun Start. I don't know if there are any people who do that, but it's Dick Green has become definitely a celebrity of that podcast world. Great guy. I mean, he was so nice. We were talking a little bit during the round, and he was very fun. But in any case, it's a great thing for a couple of teenagers to be paired with this extremely experienced golfer who has seen everything, done everything, now finding substantial success in his 50s on the Champions Tour. I think that's an experience that these young players will really get a lot out of. Seeing how he goes about things, how he plays the course. He was so smart in finding his way around Commonwealth Golf Club yesterday. Green was, it was super windy, hot, really tough conditions, and just seeing how somebody like that makes his way around a challenging golf course is a valuable experience for a young player. So that's part of it as well. And then finally,
even like a guy like Matthew Griffin, he's played multiple major championships.
Right?
Like that's a great person to get for a young kid to get to play golf with.
Yeah, and highly capable amateurs as well. So you have some elite amateur competition. You have high-level amateurs going against each other and competing for a prize. And then the final element, of course, is the golf courses, right? Revolutionary concept. If you have a tournament on great golf courses, you're probably going to have a great tournament. And of course, part of the intention of this tournament is to utilize the wonderful golf courses that the Melbourne Sandbelt has to offer and provide a great tournament venue for both up-and-coming and experienced players. So that's the idea of the tournament, and I think it works really well. It's very fun to watch and super laid back. You just kind of show up, and of course there are no gallery ropes. You're just walking these golf courses with these players. It's a great viewing experience.
I think like this event, unfortunately it's not on TV, but when you zoom out of this event, it is a replicable event for a lot of places. I think particularly if you were going to this is an American podcast, but if you were going to look at the structure of this event, I think this would be extraordinarily effective at a state level.
Yeah. You could do this in California. Yeah, hell, you could do this in Monterey, right? Or you could do this in San Francisco. You could do this in Chicago.
If you think about like California, like you're probably not every year going to get the Max Homas or the Colin Morikawas coming back and play and donating time. But every once in a while, they might come back and play. One of the things that I always think about is that if he doesn't have an event, Zach Blair will play the Utah Open, right?
Yes.
And like that's another example of a state that could do something similar to this and have it be very effective. Of like, this is a great opportunity, and it's giving back, because I think like one of the things that kids learn the most from is when they have the opportunity to play with a very high level player. There are things that you glean from that experience where you see them, the way they approach shots, the way they approach the tournament, the way they approach bad breaks, that are just invaluable moments in your personal development. Just the way they carry things and the ability, like it puts these kids out of their comfort zone, which is also an important thing. Like if you're teeing it up with a quote unquote national hero or one of the greatest golfers to come out of a certain town, you are probably a little bit more nervous than you're accustomed to being on the tee of an event. And those are great moments for you young golfers. And I think that's the thing that I respect the most about this event, and the thing that I think that should be taken away, and it is absolutely replicable between, like, it's a great opportunity for in America for local PGA chapters and local state golf associations to collaborate on the men's and women's side of things. Mm-hmm. And I think like it's important for golfers to build their network with the golfers they can glean things from, especially Absolutely. Young golfers.
Yeah, and yes, this would be a great thing for state golf associations, local golf associations, even the USGA to promote, right? Because their purpose is to promote golf and young golfers' development. But if you think about how the Sandbelt Invitational came about, it's essentially a collaboration between the Jeff Ogilvy Foundation represented by a well-known great golfer, and the kind of, local tourism board, Visit Victoria, and so that's the confluence of factors that allows this event to happen. And if you think about how that business model could be replicated elsewhere, think of all the state and local tourism boards in the US that might be interested in showing off their great golf courses and proposing their area as a golf destination. I think an event like this can really function to boost up an area and represent it as a trip that people could take. Come play our great golf courses. Look at these wonderful golfers playing these wonderful places. It seems like something that could be done a lot of places with a lot of different sources of money. You need the money to put on this event, but I think that money is there in various ways.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so you got a couple more days out watching that event. People can follow your Instagram. You'll be writing in the Fried Egg newsletter. And then, we'll look forward to you getting home and hearing more about this trip.
I'm looking forward to talking about it. We'll have all sorts of Sandbelt content coming out. We're making some stuff while we're here. So yeah, we'll definitely be talking about the Sandbelt Invitational in the newsletter and on, basically through my Instagram stories. I kind of am talking about the courses as I go along. Bear with me as I figure out how to use Instagram. I am kind of an old guy, but it's been a really good device to kind of like go around these golf courses and just show, hey, this is an interesting bunker. It's they're great golf courses to do that at. So I'm about to go out to Yarra Yarra Golf Club where the event is today and do some of that kind of stuff. And then Woodlands Golf Club is after that. So yeah, I'm doing that kind of stuff. We'll write in the newsletter, but then stay tuned. In January, February of next year, we'll be following up with some writing and hopefully videos about Sandbelt golf. I think people will find that stuff interesting. Hopefully they will. It's these golf courses have blown me away, and I expected to like them, but those expectations have kind of been exceeded. So yeah, it's a great experience, and thank you to everybody who has allowed me to come out here, including people in Fried Egg Golf. I'm very grateful for my colleagues that our company is in a position where I can come and do something like this. Very grateful for that. So yeah, thanks to everybody.
All right, Garrett, enjoy the rest of your trip and safe travels home.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Big thanks to PJ. He's been putting in double time. He's been helping with these year in review episodes on the Shotgun Start, and we've been very busy on this feed the last month. I hope you guys have enjoyed the content. We have one more episode coming to you next week. We will release it on Monday or Tuesday. We just want to give you a little bit more content for the holiday season. I hope everybody has a safe and happy holidays. And really thank you guys for another great year here. We'll be back next week, but if you don't tune into that one and I don't talk to you before the new year, have a great new year.